Can you believe that someone once called 911 demanding the police arrest me immediately, claiming I was trespassing on a place my family has legally owned since 1987? It was a morning when Pine Lake was still draped in a thin veil of mist, the breeze carrying the fresh scent of pine, the air cool against my skin. I was sitting on the old wooden dock, quietly fishing, hoping to savor one of those rare moments of peace where I didn't have to hear work calls, check endless emails, or listen to someone telling me what I should or shouldn't be doing. But that peace was shattered by a woman I will never forget. I heard sharp footsteps crunching down the gravel path toward the lake, the rapid, heavy clicks of high heels moving with angry determination. I looked up, and there she was, a woman in her 50s, short-cut blonde hair, a stern face, gripping a bright red clipboard, eyes sharp as blades. She inhaled sharply, lifted her chin, and pointed a finger straight at me, yelling, "You're trespassing on community property! I demand you leave immediately!" I turned my gaze back to the lake, took a breath, and calmly replied, "I'm sorry, but I'm not going anywhere." Her face flushed bright red, eyes bulging, hands gripping the clipboard so hard her knuckles turned white. She started trembling with rage before suddenly yanking out her phone, punching in numbers with shaky fingers, unable to contain her anger. 911. I need the police immediately. There's a strange man illegally occupying HOA property. He's refusing to leave, and I feel threatened. She screamed into the phone. Her eyes locked on me with a look of twisted satisfaction, as if any moment now, the police would arrive, handcuff me, and drag me away in front of everyone. Karen, she didn't know it yet, but that 911 call would become the biggest mistake in her HOA queen career. Before Karen's angry voice tore through the calm, there was only the lake and me. That morning, Pine Lake was exceptionally still. The water mirrored the pale pink clouds drifting lazily across the dawn sky, ripples spreading gently as a soft breeze carried the fresh scent of pine across the shore. The trees whispered with each gust, reminding me to slow down, to let the world outside slip away, and to simply breathe. I sat on the edge of the weathered wooden dock, my feet hovering just above the cool water, holding the golden bamboo fishing rod my grandfather left me. That rod had been with me since I was a boy, sitting beside him on this very dock, as he taught me how to watch the bobber dance, how to feel the subtle pull when a fish nibbled, and how to wait patiently without forcing life to move faster than it should. That rod wasn't just for fishing. It was a memory, a reminder of mornings spent with a man who taught me that peace is something you protect, something you create, even when the world wants to steal it away. I didn't come to Pine Lake to escape life. I came to remember how to live it fully. Out there the world demanded endless emails, relentless schedules, and constant noise. But here, there was only the organized tackle box beside me, the soft lap of water against the dock's wood, the occasional cry of a bird soaring overhead. Each sound was a note in a quiet song, reminding me that I didn't need to rush. I was thinking about the possibility of grilling up a nice bass for dinner, maybe calling old Pete over for a beer later, when I heard the sharp crunch of footsteps on the gravel path behind me. At first, I didn't turn around. I let the breeze touch my face, eyes on the bobber gently rocking on the water's surface, hoping whoever it was would feel the peace of place and simply walk away. But the footsteps came closer, quick, hard, purposeful, and impatient. I turned, slowly resting the bamboo rod across my lap, and saw her standing there. Mid-50s. Platinum blonde hair cut sharp, a dark blazer, pressed so perfectly it looked like it could crack, a bright red clipboard gripped tightly in her hand. Her eyes swept over the dock, my rod the small tackle box, then landed on me with an expression so sharp it cut through the morning air. Cold, assessing, and filled with the certainty of someone who believed the world existed to be managed and controlled. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she stood there, letting the sound of her heavy breathing fill the quiet space, asserting her presence like a shadow creeping over everything. I took a slow breath, the kind you take when you know a storm is about to break over the quiet you've fought hard to keep. I tightened my grip on the bamboo rod, feeling its smooth, familiar surface under my palm, grounding me to this place my family had cherished since 1987. All I wanted was to fish, to honor my grandfather, to keep a promise to myself to protect this peace. But it seemed that Karen had other plans for that morning. Karen didn't just stand there quietly with her bright red clipboard. She shifted her weight forward, her shoes crunching on the gravel, planting herself at the edge of the dock like a general ready to declare war. Her lips tightened, eyes narrowing as she sucked in a sharp breath, as if filling herself with enough air to blow the peace out of the entire lake in one scream. Then she launched, "You are trespassing on HA property, and you are in violation of Pine Lake Community Resolution 15B, she yelled, each syllable landing like a slap against the morning calm. She was close enough now that I could see the white of her knuckles, as she clenched the clipboard, the fine lines on her face tightening with every word. Her chest heaving with the conviction that she was in the right, that she was powerful, that she could order the world around her to bend to her will. I let her words wash over me, the way I had learned to let the lake's ripples roll beneath the dock without resistance. I watched her, taking in the sharp edges of her perfectly pressed blazer, the way her hair didn't move even as the breeze brushed past us, and the flicker of excitement in her eyes as she saw me sitting there, not reacting, not giving her the fear or submission she craved. Karen jabbed a finger toward me, her voice rising. You can't just come and set up like you OW anti-plus! This dock, this shoreline, it belongs to the community. You need to pack up your things and leave. No, I adjusted my grip on my grandfather's bamboo rod, calmly setting it down beside my tackle box. I stood, slowly, deliberately, letting my height straighten out, letting the calm in me remain unbroken even as she tried to claw at it with every word. Ma'am, I said evenly, I'm just fishing. That simple statement seemed to pour gasoline on her fire. Her eyes widened, her face flushing red, a vein pulsing at her temple. Don't mom me. This is Pirivat Parapar Y under the governance of the OA, and I am the Parsadient of this O. She nearly shrieked, the last words coming out high-pitched, as if declaring them louder would make them truer. Behind the anger, I saw something else's fear. The kind of fear that lives inside people who need control over everything around them, because they can't control the chaos within themselves. But I wasn't there to diagnose Karen. I was there to fish, to keep the promise I made to myself to protect the peace my grandfather had shown me how to find. I could feel the lake behind me, calm, timeless, indifferent to Karen's clipboard and her need for power. The breeze moved past us again, swaying the reeds, ignoring the tension she was trying to create. Karen took another step forward, close enough now that I could see the small printed HOA bylaws paper, clipped to her clipboard, highlighted in neon yellow, corners worn from being waved in too many faces. I will not let some Estirangiar break the rules I have worked so hard to enforce here, she barked. I will call the police, and you will be removed for trespassing. Her finger jabbed toward the road, as if pointing to the invisible officers she was summoning. The excitement in her voice cracked slightly, as though she was trying to convince herself this would go exactly how she imagined me, in handcuffs, being dragged off while she stood victorious on the dock. I glanced down at my tackle box, the sticker on its side faded, reading, "Patience is a virtue." A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "If you feel that's necessary, ma'am," I replied softly, "you should call them." She blinked, her jaw tightening, realizing I wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to panic, wasn't going to give her the emotional reaction she was fishing for. That's when she pulled out her phone with a shaky hand, dialing quickly, pressing the speaker button so every word could echo across the lake, letting the morning air carry her drama to any ears willing to listen. 911. What's your emergency? Karen's voice came out in a controlled shriek. This is Karen, president of the Pine Lake HOA. I have a trespasser on community property who is refusing to leave. I need officers dispatched immediately. He is making me feel unsafe and is breaking our community rules. She shot me a look of smug satisfaction, like she could already hear the sirens coming down the road, ready to rip apart my quiet morning, ready to end my presence on the dock forever. I turned my gaze back to the lake, watching a ripple catch the light, refusing to let her chaos drown out the calm I came here to protect. Karen didn't know that the dock she was so desperate to clear, the dock she claimed was community property, was part of the land my grandfather had bought, documented, and passed down to me, free and clear, protected by the very laws she claimed to know so well. And as she stood there, pacing, glaring, waiting for the sirens to announce her victory, I quietly picked up my grandfather's bamboo rod, feeling its familiar weight, and prepared for what was coming. Because Karen had no idea that the fight she was starting wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. Karen stood there gripping her bright red clipboard, her eyes gleaming with twisted satisfaction as she heard the 911 dispatcher confirm her call had been logged. She took a deep breath, adjusted the collar of her blazer, and folded her arms like a queen waiting for the police to arrive and drag the trespasser off her precious lakefront. I didn't say a word. I calmly reeled in my line, gently unhooking the bass that had just bitten, releasing it back into the water. The quiet plop it made as it swam away felt like a promise this wasn't over, and I was ready. Because while Karen thought she was about to watch me get arrested, I was about to watch her entire fantasy crumble. From a distance, the sound of sirens echoed across Pine Lake, slicing through the quiet morning air. 2 patrol cars rolled down the dusty lake road, pulling up near the parking area as the gravel crunched under their tires. Karen practically bounced in place, casting a smug look over her shoulder at me. Told you, you're done. I gently set my grandfather's bamboo rod down on the dock, standing straight, eyes forward, my posture calm and unbothered. The two officers stepped out, a tall, lean male officer with dark sunglasses and a younger female officer with sharp eyes and a notepad in hand. They approached us at a steady pace, and Karen rushed forward to block their path, pointing dramatically in my direction. "Thank goodness you're here. That's him," she shrieked. "He's trespassing on HOA property, refusing to leave, threatening me and the community." The male officer glanced from Karen to me, his brows furrowing slightly at her frantic tone. He kept his voice calm. "Sir, we've received a report about a trespassing incident on community property. Can you tell us what's going on?" Karen cut in before I could answer, nearly spitting her words. "There's nothing to explain. Arrest him." I held the officer's gaze, then slowly reached into my jacket pocket, where I had prepared my special fishing equipment for today. A worn yellow envelope with Pine Lake, important, written in my grandfather's handwriting. I opened the envelope and pulled out the original deed to the property, showing the exact lot lines, extending from the cabin to the water's edge, explicitly granting riparian rights and dock access, notarized, stamped, and dated 1987. "Officers," I said evenly, handing the paperwork over, "this is the original, notarized deed for this property, confirming my family's ownership long before the HOA existed." The male officer took the papers, while the female officer unfolded a county parcel map, cross-referencing the details and plot lines. Karen's face drained of color, her eyes darting over the documents as if searching for some loophole, something, anything, to save her narrative. The male officer read carefully, flipping each page, verifying the county stamp, the surveyor's signature, and the clear transfer of ownership. Then he looked up at Karen, his voice professional but firm. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation proving the HOA owns this specific parcel of land?" Karen stuttered, fumbling with the clipboard, flipping through pages of printed HOA resolutions, her voice cracking. These are the community rules. All shoreline areas are common property under HOA oversight." The female officer shook her head, her tone calm but unyielding. "Ma'am, HOA regulations do not override legally documented, notarized property ownership. According to this deed, this land, including the dock and shoreline, is private property, exempt from HOA claims, and Mr. Miller has every right to be here." The words landed like a hammer. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her face went pale and the clipboard she had been gripping so tightly slipped from her fingers, hitting the gravel with a sharp clack that echoed across the water. I bent down, picked up the clipboard, brushed off the dust, and handed it back to her, looking her in the eyes. "You might need this, Karen, to write down what you learned today." Her hands trembled as she took it back, her eyes filled with confusion, fear, and humiliation all at once. The breeze moved across the lake, sending small ripples dancing over the surface, reflecting the morning light. Karen stood there, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline, unable to process how quickly her illusion of control had slipped away. I turned back to my grandfather's bamboo rod, gently picking it up and adjusting the line, lowering it back into the water. The bobber settled on the glassy surface, swaying gently as the world around me returned to its quiet rhythm, ignoring the drama that had just unfolded. Because in the end, the truth always wins. After the police left, Pine Lake felt like it had taken a long, relieved breath. The water returned to its gentle rhythm, the breeze whispered through the pines, and the dock felt like mine again. I thought that might have been the end of it. That Karen would swallow her pride, retreat with her clipboard, and learn to leave well enough alone. But I had underestimated how far some people will go when their illusion of control shatters. The next morning, I found my fishing lines cut, the ends left dangling on the dock, clean slices that told me it wasn't a curious animal or a stray branch. Later that afternoon, a strange film of soapsuds floated near the shoreline where I liked to cast, bubbles catching the light like twisted little rainbows. It wasn't enough to kill the fish, but it made me think twice about keeping any catch for dinner. At first, it was small things: a tipped-over trash can, garbage scattered around my driveway, mysterious cars parked blocking my path whenever I returned from a supply run into town. Each time I cleaned up, each time I calmly maneuvered around the obstacles, refusing to give Karen what she wanted: a reaction. But it was clear that Karen wasn't finished. She moved the war online. I discovered that she had created a private Facebook group named Concerned Pine Lake Residents, where she spun wild stories about a dangerous squatter on community property. She posted blurry photos of me on the dock, taken from behind trees, cropping them in a way to make me look like a shadowy figure haunting the lake. Karen claimed I was holding loud parties, blasting music at night, scaring off wildlife, lowering property values, and dumping trash into the lake. I had never done any of those things. Most evenings, I sat quietly on the dock with my grandfather's bamboo rod, listening to the water lap against the wood, the only noise coming from the occasional loon calling out into the dusk. But Karen's post gained traction. People who had never met me commented, calling me a menace, demanding that something be done. Worse, she started posting under fake profiles, pretending to be long-time residents voicing their concerns. One profile even claimed to be Old Pete, my neighbor, complaining about my behavior. The real Old Pete, who didn't know how to use a smartphone if his life depended on it, walked over one afternoon with a scowl on his face and a piece of paper printed with Karen's posts. "This woman's got a nerve," he muttered, shaking his head, his eyes flashing with anger. Using my name to spread her poison. Pete's frustration was a mirror of my own. Karen had turned a simple fishing trip into a psychological siege, trying to isolate me from the community and wear down my will to stay. And it didn't stop there. I would find small bags of trash left on my dock in the morning, beer cans I never drank, cigarette butts I never smoked, carefully placed to look like I had littered. Once, I woke up to find a notice of violation taped to my cabin door, with a fake HOA letterhead listing infractions I had never committed. Individually, each act was too petty to call the police, but together, it was a constant, gnawing harassment. What Karen didn't know was that while she was playing these childish games, I was documenting everything. I installed hidden security cameras, discreet, blending into the trees and dock posts, capturing clear footage of Karen and a few of her enablers creeping around my property in the middle of the night, tipping over bins, cutting lines, and dumping soap into the water. Watching the footage made me angry, yes, but it also made me sad. Sad that someone would degrade themselves like this for a misplaced sense of power. The tipping point came when Karen escalated from online slander to real-world intimidation. One Friday afternoon, she marched down the dock with a stack of papers, waving them in my face. "I've gathered signatures," she declared, eyes wild. 12 residents have signed this petition demanding your removal for the safety of the community." She slammed the papers onto my tackle box, hard enough to make my coffee mug jump. I picked them up, flipping through them calmly, noting that half the signatures were from people I had never even seen around the lake, and the other half were from residents, who had probably signed just to get Karen to leave them alone. "Interesting signatures," I commented, setting the papers down. Karen crossed her arms, glaring, waiting for me to panic to pack up to leave. Instead, I pulled out my phone and calmly dialed a number I hadn't called in months. I made sure she could hear every word. "Hey, this is Jake Miller. I need you to prepare the Pine Lake files, all of them. Yes, everything we discussed last year, it's time." Karen's eyes narrowed, curiosity and fear flickering across her face. "What are you planning?" she demanded. I smiled politely, tucking the petition into my jacket. "Just taking care of some business." She tried to hold her ground, but I could see the uncertainty now. The fear that maybe, just maybe, she had pushed too far. Over the next few days, I spent hours going through the old files my grandfather had left me, along with newer paperwork I had been quietly gathering for years. Property surveys, mineral rights, purchase agreements, easements, and utility contracts. All the threads that connected Pine Lake to the past and future. Because Karen didn't know that the reason I wasn't leaving, the reason I wasn't intimidated, was because I owned more than just the dock. I owned the ground beneath her house. I owned most of the land around Pine Lake, quietly purchased through Miller Holdings LLC over the past 8 years, structured with long-term ground leases that allowed residents to buy homes on the land, while I retained ownership of the parcels themselves. And soon, Karen was going to find out exactly who she had been messing with. Karen sent out a notice to every Pine Lake Wet EMRGNCYHOAENG Thursday night to address the threat to our community. My name was printed in bold, underlined, as if I was some dangerous criminal about to be dragged out under the cover of darkness. Karen booked the community hall, set out 60 chairs, prepared a PowerPoint titled, "Emergency. Saving Pine Lake," and rehearsed what she thought would be her greatest victory. Standing before the community, riling them up, getting them to vote me out, forcing me to leave Pine Lake in disgrace. That Thursday, I arrived 10 minutes late. The lights were bright, residents sat in neat rows, whispering among themselves, casting nervous glances at the stage. Karen stood at the front, holding a microphone like it was a scepter, her voice sharp. "We cannot allow a stranger to ruin our community, lower our property values, and threaten our peace." As I quietly stepped inside, she saw me, her eyes flashing with triumph as she pointed.
"There he is! That's him! The trespasser!"
"He has no right to be here." People turned to look at me. Some curious, some confused, some just tired of the drama. I nodded politely, moved to the back, set my leather briefcase on my lap, and slowly unzipped it. Karen continued her tirade. projecting grainy photos of me fishing on the dock, edited with captions labeling me a menace, accusing me of littering, hosting loud parties, scaring wildlife, polluting the lake, and intimidating residents. A middle-aged woman raised her hand, hesitant. I heard he has paperwork showing he owns the land. Karen snapped back with a condescending laugh. Don't believe his lies! He can't trick us with fake papers. This is HOA land, and it's time we took it back. She held up a stack of papers, waving them like trophies. I have a petition here, signed by 12 residents, demanding his immediate removal for the safety of Pine Lake. She slapped the papers down on a folding table, expecting cheers, validation, a standing ovation. The room, however, fell into an awkward silence. People glanced at Karen, then at me, waiting. I stood up. Karen's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening. You don't have the right to speak here, she barked. From the front row, old Pete, arms crossed, raised his chin. Let the man speak, Karen. We deserve to hear both sides. I walked to front, placed my briefcase on the table next to Karen's laptop, and slowly pulled out a large, color-coded map of Pine Lake, followed by a stack of notarized documents and aged deeds. I unfolded the map, letting it cover the table, every resident's eyes tracing the lines, the color codes, the highlighted zones. Everyone. I began calmly. I'd like to clear up some misunderstandings. I pointed to the dock and shoreline on the map. My family has owned this property since 1987, before the HOA was formed. I have the original, notarized deed confirming our rights to the shoreline and dock. I flipped to the next document. Over the past 8 years through Miller Holdings LLC, I have quietly purchased most of the land around Pine Lake under long-term ground leases, which many of you signed when buying your homes. The room fell into stunned silence. People started checking their phones, whispering, rifling through purses and wallets, pulling out property paperwork, scanning the fine print for the words, Miller Holdings LLC. I continued, maintaining a steady, calm voice. Blue areas on this map are HOA common areas. Red areas are privately owned by Miller Holdings. As you can see, over 80% of Pine Lake's surrounding land is under my ownership. Karen's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing, the clipboard in her hand trembling. Fat, that can't be, she stammered. I looked directly at her, maintaining eye contact. Karen, your home sits on lot 47, which is under a 20-year ground lease with Miller Holdings. You have 14 months left on that lease. A sharp gasp echoed across the room. Karen stumbled back a step, clutching the clipboard to her chest like a shield. A man in the crowd called out, "Wet. Does that mean we're renting the land under our houses?" I nodded. You own your homes. I own the land beneath them. That's why your property taxes have remained stable, and why your ground lease rates have not increased. Another woman raised her hand, voice shaky. Are you going to evict us? I shook my head. No. I have no interest in uprooting families or destroying this community. I just want to live in peace, fish on my dock, and preserve Pine Lake the way my grandfather intended. There was a pause, a collective moment of realization as the room processed the truth they had never known. And then, slowly, people began to nod. Some sighed with relief. Others exchanged looks of quiet embarrassment for having believed Karen's fear-mongering. Karen's face flushed red, then pale, then red again. She dropped her clipboard. The clack of it hitting the tile floor echoing like a gavel in the silent room. Old Pete leaned back in his chair, chuckling. Told you Karen was barking up the wrong tree. People laughed, softly at first, then louder as the tension drained from the room. It wasn't mocking laughter. It was the laughter of people finally realizing they had been played. I gathered my documents, carefully folding the map, placing it back into my briefcase. All I ask, I said, turning to face everyone, is that we treat each other with respect and keep Pine Lake the peaceful community it was meant to be. As I walked toward the exit, Karen stood there, shaking, her eyes wide with fear and rage, watching the authority she clung to slip away. The residents she thought she controlled no longer looked at her with respect, only pity. She opened her mouth as if to speak but found no words. Because deep down, Karen finally understood that she had not been fighting a trespasser on community land. She had been fighting her own landlord. But I also knew, as I stepped out into the cool night air, the pine scent drifting around me, that Karen wasn't finished yet. People like her rarely accept defeat gracefully, and I would be ready for what she would try next. I should have known Karen wouldn't let it go. After the HOA meeting, Pine Lake felt lighter. Neighbors I'd never spoken to before started nodding at me when they walked by. A few even stopped to apologize for not questioning Karen sooner. Old Pete came by with a thermos of coffee, dropping into a chair next to me on the dock as we watched the sunrise. You did good, kid, he said, watching the mist rise off the lake. But, you know she ain't done, right? I knew. Karen disappeared for a few days. No more Facebook posts, no more flyers pinned to cabin doors. The silence felt heavy like the air before a storm. Then, one Tuesday at 2:03 a.m. my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand, jolting me from a deep sleep. I blinked at the notification, Mation Detecté, dock camera. My heart thudded once hard before my mind cleared. I grabbed the phone, pulling up the live camera feed. There she was. Karen, in the darkness, her blonde hair tangled, her face pale under the moonlight, standing on my dock. She wore an oversized hoodie, her hands fumbling with something heavy. A gas can. The image made my blood run cold. She moved slowly, looking around with jerky, paranoid movements before uncapping the can and pouring gasoline along the edge of the dock, the liquid glistening in the moonlight. In her other hand, she held a lighter. I didn't wait. I hit the direct emergency dial I had set up months ago with the sheriff's department. This is Jake Miller at Pine Lake. I have a live camera feed showing a woman attempting arson on my dock. She has a gas can and a lighter. The dispatcher's calm voice belied the urgency. Units are en route, Mr. Miller. Please stay inside and lock your doors. But I couldn't just stand there. From the window, I could see Karen on the dock, pacing back and forth like a trapped animal, muttering to herself. She flicked the lighter once, twice, the tiny flame flaring and dying in the breeze. I opened the cabin door, stepping onto the porch. The cool night air slapped me awake, the scent of pine mixing with the harsh, chemical tang of gasoline drifting on the breeze. Karen! I yelled, my voice echoing across the water. She froze. She turned, her face contorted, eyes wild and shiny with unshed tears. You think you can take everything? She screamed back. You think you can own everything? I won't let you destroy this place. The lighter flared in her hand again, her finger trembling above the trigger. Karen, put it down. I shouted, taking a step forward. You're about to make a mistake you can't come back from. But she laughed, a high, broken sound that sent a chill down my spine. You already took everything from me. My home, my purpose, my community. If I can't have it, neither can you. She flicked the lighter again. The distant sound of sirens began to cut through the stillness, growing louder, flashing blue and red reflecting off the lake as the patrol cars turned down the gravel road. Karen heard it too. She let out a sob, raising the lighter high, the flame catching in the wind, reflecting in her wide, tear-filled eyes. Dawn, I yelled. But it was too late. She threw the lighter down onto the dock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a whoosh, the gasoline ignited, flames racing along the dock's edge, lighting up the water with violent orange. The heat hit me from the porch, the smell of burning wood and fuel filling the air. Karen stumbled back, staring at the flames, the horror of what she had done finally breaking through her rage. The first patrol car skidded to a stop, deputies rushing out, pulling Karen back from the flames, cuffing her as she screamed and cried, trying to explain herself through sobs. He's stealing everything! I was trying to save us? You don't understand. They read her rights as she continued to cry, her voice cracking, the fire illuminating her tear-streaked face. One deputy ran to the dock, using a fire extinguisher to douse the flames, while another grabbed a hose from the side of my cabin, helping to put out the fire before it could reach the main structure. I stood there, clutching the porch railing, breathing heavily, watching as Karen was led away in handcuffs, still sobbing, her eyes empty and lost. The fire didn't destroy the dock completely. The edge was charred, the boards blackened and cracked, but it still stood, stubborn as ever, like the lake itself. As the deputies finished up, one of them, the young female sergeant, who had responded to Karen's earlier false report, came over to me, her eyes reflecting the orange glow of the last embers. We'll handle the charges, Mr. Miller, she said. Arson, reckless endangerment, trespassing. This time there's no getting out of it. I nodded, exhausted, but a weight lifted from my chest. After they left, I stood alone on the dock, the air smoky, the lake quiet again. I looked at the scorched boards, then at the golden bamboo fishing rod leaning against the railing, untouched by the fire. A breeze came across the lake, cool and gentle, carrying the scent of water and ash, whispering through the pines. And I knew then that no matter how hard Karen tried, she couldn't take this place from me. Karen's attempt to burn down the dock was her final, desperate act to control a world she could no longer bend to her will. In trying to destroy what she hated, she destroyed the last pieces of herself. As the sky began to lighten with dawn, I cast my line into the still water, the bobber floating quietly, the lake reflecting the first hints of sunrise. Karen was gone. And Pine Lake was still here. Karen was arrested that night, the smell of gasoline and smoke still clinging to the cool Pine Lake air. She screamed, cursed, pleaded, then cursed again as the deputies placed the cuffs on her wrists, her voice cracking with rage and desperation. But all the screaming in the world couldn't change the reality of what she had done. At her hearing, her public defender tried to argue mental distress. That Karen's fear of losing her home and power drove her to a desperate act. but the camera footage, the witness statements, and her own words. "If I can't have it, no one can," were all the court needed. Karen was sentenced to 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, a 500-foot restraining order from me and my property, and mandatory anger management counseling. But the part that broke her the most wasn't the sentence itself. It was what the judge added, almost casually, as the gavel fell. Community service will consist of cleaning up trash around Pine Lake every Saturday morning. That first Saturday, the sun rose over a calm lake, lighting the ripples in gold as I sat on the dock, my grandfather's golden bamboo rod in hand. Across the lake, Karen appeared, wearing an orange safety vest, clutching a black trash bag in trembling hands. She moved along the shoreline, picking up empty cans, plastic wrappers, cigarette butts she hadn't smoked, and broken glass she hadn't dropped. She glanced toward my dock once, her eyes catching mine, her face flushing with humiliation and anger. I lifted a hand in greeting, not mockery, not gloating, just a neighbor acknowledging another human being. Karen turned away quickly, her shoulders slumping as she moved on. Week after week, the scene repeated itself. I would sit on the dock, casting my line into the water. The gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine and the soft slap of water against the posts. The world was calm, the lake reflecting the sky, birds calling in the distance. Karen would walk slowly along the shoreline, her orange vest bright against the green, picking up trash, pausing to wipe sweat from her brow, sometimes stopping to stare at the lake, lost in thought. Once, she dropped her bag, trash spilling across the grass. I set my rod down, walked over, and began helping her pick it up. She froze, her hands shaking. I placed a crushed can into her bag, looked her in the eyes, and said quietly, "Thank you for keeping Pine Lake clean." Karen didn't reply. She lowered her eyes, nodded stiffly, and kept picking up trash. On the final day of her community service, I was there as always, sitting on my dock, the bamboo rod steady in my hands, the water calm. Karen stood across the lake, trash bag in hand, looking around the shoreline she had come to know in a new way. For a moment, our eyes met. This time, she didn't look away. She didn't smile, but she nodded, a small, tired nod of acknowledgement, before she turned and walked away, her shoulders a little less heavy. Pine Lake returned to peace. Children fished from the community dock again, neighbors walked their dogs without fear, and old Pete still came by with coffee, settling into a chair beside me to watch the sunrise. And me. I sat with my grandfather's bamboo rod, watching the bobber dance on the water's surface, feeling the breeze, letting the lake's quiet wash over me. Karen learned her lesson. And Pine Lake remained as it was meant to be, peaceful, clean, quiet, and free. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come with loud bangs or dramatic courtroom speeches. Sometimes, justice is found in the quiet of a lake at dawn, as you watch someone who tried to destroy your peace walk by, picking up trash they didn't create, realizing the only person they truly hurt was themselves. True victory isn't in crushing your enemies, but in protecting your peace while they learn from their own mistakes. And as the sun rose, I cast my line again, the world calm, the water still, knowing Pine Lake would always be here. The biggest lesson I want to share with you is this: protect your inner peace with patience and self-respect. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't about defeating others, but about staying calm through the storms, so that when the sun rises, you can still smile and welcome a new day with a light heart. Believe this: life always finds a way to bring justice to those who live kindly and stand firm, sooner or later. That is how you truly win in this life. If you feel this story deserves to be known by more people, please hit like and share this video with your friends or with someone who needs a reminder that they are not alone. You never know, your one click might give someone the strength they need to keep going. And if you love real life stories, deep lessons, and perspectives that help you grow stronger each day, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell right now. Every week, I'll share more real stories and real lessons so we can grow together and live a life we can be proud of. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Remember, protecting your peace is how you win against all the storms out there.